Hey guys, Dylan from the Geek Duo here, and today I'll be bringing you my reaction to Percy Jackson Season 1, Episode 3, titled We Visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. Percy sets off on the quest to Let's try that again. Percy sets off on the quest to return Zeus's Master Bolt and stop a war between the gods. As you can tell, it's been a few days since I've done one of these, so a little tongue-tied because I took Christmas off this year. In fact, you can actually see one of my Christmas presents behind me. That is a Lego of Grogu. This tiny speck of color right here, that's actually a tiny minifigure of Grogu that accompanies it. So yeah, you can just see that in the background because I've got a corner desk. But yeah, so this one, obviously, because of what the synopsis said, this is visiting a Garden Gnome Emporium, which means we're getting at least 3 chapters, I'm pretty sure, in this. Yeah. So we're getting at least 2.5. Yep, okay, that tracks with everything. So, now before we start, I want to go over some notes and thoughts about the first 2 episodes because I have been seeing some criticisms for this show already. Hopefully, I'll remember to put timestamps so you can just skip ahead to the actual start of the reaction. But I've actually touched upon these criticisms myself in my reaction, so you know I agree with them. I just want to expand upon that. And the first is, this show is feeling a little rushed so far. Like, I'll admit, these episodes are shorter than what I was expecting. I was expecting 45 to 50 minute episodes with an opening and a closing. We don't have an opening for this show, but I was still expecting around the same time, whereas this one only just hit the lower mark of that time frame with closing and everything. But after the first episode, I thought, okay, we went through 3 chapters in this episode and skipped over one. That means 21 chapters total across 8 episodes. That's 3 chapters per 7 episodes. No, 3 chapters per episode for 7 episodes, plus a full episode's worth of time to let certain scenes breathe more than others, to add in the extra details they want to and everything. And that's a great time frame. And everything. Sure, I was upset about what they took out of the first episode, mainly that scene with the fates, but okay. And then we went through almost double that in the next episode. Now that's a little exaggeration. It was only like 4.5, so it's an extra 1.5 times that. We need to give Percy some actual time to make proper connections with the people at camp before you send him on the quest. Keep in the sword training with Luke and the rest of the Hermes kids. Show some of the activities around camp. Have him acclimate a little, because his friendships, which is one of the biggest things of Percy's character, especially to one specific person, is very important for the whole story and for the ending of this story. And right now, I wouldn't really call him and that person friends. They're just 2 people who are on good terms. Heck, they could have even expanded on that Council of Cloven Elders scene, which wasn't in the book, and they obviously spent a lot of effort into addressing that set for 5 seconds, and no one talks. And if they really needed to have Capture the Flag in that second episode, have it end with Clarice confronting Percy in the woods before their fight. have that be the cliffhanger from the premiere episodes, and then next week pick up with the second half of Capture the Flag. Like, surely that would have given more time to breathe instead of finishing Capture the Flag, doing another half a chapter of the book in that one episode. Like, it just wouldn't have felt so rushed. Secondly, and this is another one that I've seen from other channels that are very into these books, and I'll admit, I'm not going to call them out because people who can not agree with me, and I'm not sending that over to them, but Grover's characterization in the first couple episodes does not feel like Grover from the books at all. Book Grover would not have ratted Percy out to the principal like that. He is nowhere near as timid or skittish as he is in the books, which come from his goat instincts. He didn't fail the mission to get Percy to camp, so he doesn't need to head on this quest to actually get his searcher's license and everything. And he just a completely different character. And he's not the only one. Gabe is another major one. But he is the most important one due to him being a deuteragonist. Look, I understand. Change a character's race, looks, adaptation to add more representation, diversity into what is admittedly an extremely white book. There are only two people I can think of that are non-white and two that are white adjacent from the first series. And those two, the first two, die within the chapter that they're introduced. And one of the white adjacent ones dies in the same book they're introduced. Like, it's a very white book. So even if it wasn't for, hey, these actors are best for their roles, even if it wasn't for that, I can understand adding in more representation to everything. On top of the fact that it should just have representation and everything. Like, even if it wasn't for, like, Walker, Charlie, Leah, all of them having good chemistry and fitting their characters from what we've seen, like, I can understand the changes that were made and everything. But I draw the line completely at changing a characterization of a character, especially one of the main ones, in the adaptation. And I'll say, this isn't against, I think his name's Aiden. I don't actually know how to pronounce it. One sec, I'll look it up. Not Ian. Like, I think that it's nothing against him. I haven't seen him anything else, but I'm sure he's good in what he has done. But I don't think he was the right fit for... he wasn't the right fit. He isn't going in the right direction from the directors. Like, they're sending him in a different way than the book Grover would have been. Because, like, just doing a quick look, he's been in a lot of things already. So, it's definitely not on him. It's the way the character is in this. Anyway, let's finally get into the actual episode after 9 minutes. And yeah, so this one already has some very interesting stuff just based on what I'm remembering from these chapters. Do I think we're going to stop after the 2.5 chapters to get to the end of where this title comes from? No, I'm expecting to go at least one more after that, but who knows? That may be linked into what is going to be the main point of the next episode. Let's get this started in 3, 2, 1, go. And you can tell I am so passionate about this. I love this series. I just want it to be able to breathe properly. They had enough time for it to breathe properly. And also, Grover is weird. Gabe is weird. What? He's meant to be the worst. He's meant to have beaten Percy's mum. One, the way they portrayed him in that he's not that kind of character. And B, the way they showed Sally, she would not stand up for that. There wasn't even any talk of, hey, I'm with him so that his extremely pungent human smell will mask your, like, enhanced godly smell from being one of the big three. Like, that's why Sally was with him in the books. And there was no touching upon it or anything. Okay, so we are actually getting this. Nice. Just no explanation or anything as to what's happening. I am noticing many set pieces that were mentioned in the book. We've still got like 9 bottles of eggnog and it's after Christmas, so maybe drinking a bit more than I should be. This is fairly similar to what was in the book. In the book, it was Gabe and all his buddies around a poker table, each set a line. I feel like that fits more Clarice than Annabeth. Again, why do they have blackjack? Pegasi are meant to be white than that. Yeah, like, okay, no, that's another black one in the background. Interesting. Like, blackjack's meant to be unique because he's... I'm trying to find the prophecy. That's what I thought. Okay. I knew there was more to it, but I just couldn't remember what the like I knew what happened because of the prophecy. I just couldn't remember the lines. Well, that is a very neat way for that to be. And the fact that each one only has one wing. Uh, I always read it as they had wings on each. It's fair. Amongst other things. That is an oddly humanoid looking tree. Yeah, Chiron's meant to. This is actually what Chiron's meant to say to them, well, to Percy, as he's leaving, and specifically tells him, don't use the flying shoes because the sky is. Well, they agree that. Girl, you have no idea what you're doing because you haven't left the camp since you were 7. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, okay. I thought it's meant to be all three of them on the bus, but that's two. So they're meant to have run out the front of the bus while it was pulled over on the side of a road because of the damage being done by the three Furies and their whips. And there's meant to be a photo of Percy with his sword out in a mortal newspaper where you can see that the mist made it look like a baseball bat and he was wreaking havoc. Nice, Grover. Technically, he was Thalia's protector. That's why he failed his first quest. Well, first protector job is because Thalia specifically died. Uh, are we really just rushing straight over that? It's a very interesting decision. Yes, but did she tell you the rest of Medusa's story in relation to one specific person who is a part of your group? So they're not meant to know that she's Medusa until towards the end. They stumble upon this gas station, Garden Gnome Emporium, whatever, and they go in. They're charmed, but like a snake tamer and all that. And it's not until after lunch when she's like, "Oh, I take a. Before you leave, would you mind taking a photograph for me?" They are touching upon it. I'll expand upon that later. I'm curious as to how this is going to go down. Was her temple made as... Which variation are they going with? Except you were a mortal woman. Hmm. Arachne? That was just, was it? I do like how you could see the hair moving when they showed her from the front. Here's the thing. The story I've heard is it wasn't specifically the fact that she attracted Poseidon in that. It was more the fact that they had sex in her temple is the reason I heard. And yeah, well, no. That was one version I heard. The other was he forced himself upon her in her temple. Either way, it was in her temple. On one hand, it was to punish her for desecrating the temple, and the other was to protect her so that nothing like Medusa would, nothing like Poseidon would happen again. Every telling is different. Your father? You know, I was expecting more slitted pupils. Well, this is really feeling very Clash of the Titans. It was Clash, right? Not Wrath. Great job, Grover. She looks familiar. Well, that was a very interesting plan. A very interesting plan. I guess, yeah, that does work the same as the veil covering her eyes to stop it from working. Hmm. It's his Uncle Ferdinand. I mean, that's obviously I said no. They kind of think you're impertinent. That's a direct quote from the. He already knows what's in the box. I was not expecting to see this. Was not expecting to see Hermes so early. Okay, well, see, this is what I meant by they've got a full episode's worth of time to let things breathe. Because we visited Garden Gnome Emporium, which is the entire thing with Medusa, is 20 pages. This one, they reached it after 20 minutes. So, 20 pages, 20 minutes worth of episode. Which ironically is the speed at which I read. So, I read a page a minute in a book this size. So, that's actually very well timed. But, yeah, so there were definitely some changes from this into the from the book into this. For one, it's, as I said, it's meant to be all through. Hang on, I'll just rearrange this. For one, it's meant to be all three of the Furies on the bus, and they're meant to have this massive fight, and then when Percy, Grover, and Abbott get off the bus with all the mortals running away, someone snaps a picture of Percy with his sword out, and that picture later shows up in the news saying violent teen wrecks bus, and you see Riptide as a baseball bat as a way to show how the mist works. Because by this point, Gabe is meant to have been on the news saying that Percy, he kidnapped his mother, he stole Gabe's car, kidnapped his mom. There was some of Sully's blood when the car crashed left in the car, so that's meant to be evidence of a struggle and everything. And basically, Percy's meant to be being hunted by the police at the same time that he's on this quest and everything. And so that picture of him with the baseball bat is meant to be further proof that Percy is a deranged teen. But on this one, it's only two of the Furies, plus they don't have their whips. They're meant to have like this whip that seems to be made out of fire that as their primary weapon, along with of course their claws and that. And yeah. I don't know what it means if a monster gets turned into a statue. Like, does their essence still go back into the underworld? Does that statue have to be destroyed like Electo's was? Because all three Furies are meant to be back in the underworld once it gets to that part of the story. I don't feel like that's a spoiler, because obviously that's where this is all heading. But all three are meant to be back there, so does this mean Electo isn't going to be there? Does it mean that any monster turned into a statue can be returned once their essence has been reborn and everything? Who knows? It's meant to take them the entirety of the chapter, well, not entirety, the majority of the chapter, to figure out that Medusa is Auntie M. Because once they get off the bus is hit by lightning, it explodes, they run off into the woods. Eventually, they stumble across this roadside diner, well, not really a diner, more of a gas station sort of thing, that it actually looked like in this. It did look to be like a sort of gas station thing called Auntie M's Gnome Emporium. And basically, they go in, Auntie M sees these three kids. She's like, I can offer you some food. I've got a kitchen set up in the back room. You can make like burgers and fries and all of that. While they're there, they're meant to be feeling a bit placated and everything, and then not really fully perceiving what's going on around them. Grover can't smell that she's a monster over all of the food, in the same way that the toilet was meant to mask Percy's scent. The food in RTM masks her scent from Grover, because satyrs can smell monsters. Then they notice that all of the statues are incredibly lifelike. And so Auntie M says, oh yeah, I take a picture of all of my customers and then I use that as references when I'm making my statues. Would you mind if I take a picture of you guys before you leave? And what it's meant to be is that when she takes the picture, she takes off her veil and turns them into a statue. And that is, she's like, the face is always the hardest to get right, because in that split second before they turn to stone, they see what they're looking at and they go to shock, fear, surprise. And so the face is always wrong. And that is what sort of clues them in over time. And then Grover does have the flying shoes at this point, because when they're leaving up on the quest, Chiron tells Percy, hey, you can't use this. If you take to the sky, Zeus will not pass up the opportunity to strike you down That's why you can't fly, why you can't use planes. Stay to the ground. And so Percy gifts them to Grover. And yeah, so at this point, Grover activates the tree. He activates the shoes. He breaks off a tree branch and starts air diving Medusa with the branch until she swats him away, and he hits the tree, collapses, and is dazed. Percy ends up using a crystal ball thing to be able to see Medusa's reflection, and he cuts off her head. And then he just straight up has the idea to send the head to Olympus because of the fact that she is attacking specifically Percy and Annabeth because of what their parents did to her. And so he's like, why don't we just send this to them? Not like that. I can't remember exactly how he says it. But then it's like, they're going to think you're impertinent. I am impertinent. And yeah. But, it hit the same beats and everything. It's just was very different. And you can tell even with the way they've done it, they straight up say she's Medusa and everything, you can still see some of that snake charmer coming through in her words, in the way, more of the unsettling audio. You can sort of just have that effect of, hey, there's some sort of charm happening here. And there are a couple times where it falters. She's like, do you know my story? I do. Suddenly, do I? That's what happened. And yes, so they chose a very PG version of Medusa's story. As I've said, every single telling of Medusa is different. The majority agreement is that she was a temple maid of Athena. She got into a relationship with Poseidon, and Athena turned her into that because of the relationship with Poseidon. Those are they're the main beats of the story, and they're agreed upon by everything. The thing is, whether it was a willing relationship, whether it was a spur of the moment, whether he forced himself upon her, whether it happened just at her house, whether it happened in Athena's temple, whether she was turned to curse Medusa, whether she was done to punish Poseidon, whether she was done to protect her from any more men like Poseidon, all of these changes with different interpretations. In this one, it chose to be she's punishing Medusa because she turned, once she spent her life dedicated to Athena, and Athena gave her nothing, suddenly Athena's main rival showed up, did give her something, and Athena, not happy with that, can't punish Poseidon, has to turn Medusa into something. And the Athena is just, no, she's prideful. Her main thing is hubris. All of the ones that have run afoul of Athena are because they claim to be better than her at something. Majority of the time, it is something that she claims to be good at herself, and they claim to be better still. There have been a couple times where it's just been spur of the moment, nothing associated with Athena, and they're like, oh, I'm better than Athena at this. And they still get punished, but Athena is not very just. And as we've already started to see with Annabeth and everything, some of that is passed down to their children. We're going to get into this further down the line, but there is a thing called a fatal flaw that is exhibited in humans, in gods, and it's exhibited more by demigods because the godly stuff, the godly blood, is meant to enhance the humanness, and anything that a human struggles with is enhanced in a demigod. So a fatal flaw is enhanced in a demigod. And some of these are hereditary, some of them are character specific, and one of the hereditary ones is that hubris is passed down through the Athena cabin. So the children of Athena share her fault of hubris, and we can see that coming out in Annabeth in this. I will say, this episode sort of took my complaints from the start, and they're like, yeah, how about we just throw them out the window? Because, like, sure, can't retroactively fix the pacing of the first two episodes, but, like, half an episode dedicated to a single chapter of this. And, like, the one before it, what's it called? We Explode a Bus or something. I Ruin a Perfectly Good Bus. We got the end of I Am Offered a Quest. We got very little of that. It's basically the prophecy and them leaving camp. Didn't even get the proper goodbye or anything. I Ruin a Perfectly Good Bus, which is like, let's say, a third of this episode. And then I Visit Gnome Emporium, which is half the episode. Like, that's good pacing. And nothing about this episode felt rushed. Grover's character was a lot better than he was in the first two. I can't actually remember much of Grover's, like, dialogue in that during this specific part of the book. Because, well, this part is mainly... Well, the whole book is told from Percy's perspective, so you get his internal dialogue, you get his notes of things, you get his knowledge of things, and so the way Grover acts and feels and everything, the way Annabeth acts and feels and things, are from Percy's perspective. Whereas with the show, you actually get those characters and everything. But yeah, I don't remember what Grover was actually doing for, like, the bus scene, how he was acting at Arnie M's. But I'll just say his character was a lot better in this episode than in the first two. And that may have something to do with the fact that he was actually a character in these and not just pushed to the side like he did feel in most of episode 2, but anyway. I am very interested with the way in which they just completely glossed over the discovery of Auntie M being Medusa. Because that was a big thing of that chapter. I'll just, I'll pause it and then I'll see how it's actually worded. Yeah, okay, so I was mostly right. Well, for one, she was instantly, harsh to Annabeth, like, more blunt when talking to her and everything. Whereas with Percy, she was all kind. She gives them a vague story of what happened to her. Like, she mentions, oh, one time I had a boyfriend and this mean lady, she got jealous and she took it out on me. My sisters were with me for as long as they could be, but they've sadly passed. Grover at one point hears the snakes of her hair under the veil and he's like, oh, what's that hissing sound? Hissing? Oh, you must be able to hear the friar that's in the back. You must have very good ears. And just, there are little breadcrumbs, like at one point when they first are there, she says Annabeth's name and Percy's internal monologue's like, it's only later when I questioned, how did she know her name? And then it takes until the very end. at that point, Percy's the only one who's really charmed, and so he needs to be snapped out of it. And it's not until Annabeth pushes him to the ground to avoid being turned into stone, and he sees Medusa's true form in the crystal ball, that he actually wakes out of it. But yeah, so it was a steady breadcrumb thing, not just a someone from our world with the name Auntie Am and stone statues? Huh. But anyway, yeah. So they never mentioned Medusa's sisters in this. They didn't. At this point, Annabeth has told Percy a little bit about her dad, because he's like, oh, I haven't left camp since I was 7 and all of that, so he's like, why don't you go home to your dad and everything? But yeah, so it is a bit different. Like, it hits the same beats and everything. She does try to isolate Percy because he is Poseidon's son. It is weird that she was willing to just sort of bring Annabeth to her side, though that may have just been a ploy to further sink her teeth into Percy and all of that. Don't know. But, yeah. Okay, so that's not what I thought it was. Let's see, do we have... I'm not able to find who played Medusa in the credits, so... It says Jessica Parker Kennedy. Do I know her? Oh! Well, no wonder she looks familiar. It's Nora from The Flash. As in Barry's daughter, Nora. Okay, no wonder she looked familiar. And it was from the side profile, like the roundness of her face and that where it's like, hey, she looks familiar. Okay. Anyway, I think I've waffled on for long enough. I'll catch you guys in the next one.